We'll go ahead and call the commission meeting of May 5th to order. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders and members of the armed forces. That'll be followed by an invocation by Deacon Wilfred Hart of the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by myself. If everybody would please rise.
Let's pray. Father God in heaven, we come before you right now just to say good morning to you, Jesus. Because we know that you're sitting on your throne, sitting high but looking low. And you know our hearts, you know our thoughts, and you know what's going on here in America and around the world. Father God, we have a disease, Father God, that is spreading so fast and we don't know what to do. But we have a Father that knows all things and that can cure all things and that can heal all people. So today, Lord, I'm starting my prayer off with asking you to heal the world. First of all, heal us of our sins. Forgive us of our sins. And then, Lord, you said that if we just turn from our wicked ways, you, Lord, will heal the land. And I believe that you will. And then, Lord, I pray for this chamber. I pray for our leadership here in Indian River County, Father God, that they will continue to make the right decisions, continue to be led by the Holy Spirit to do the works of the Lord, and not their will, but your will be done. And then, Lord, I know you will bless us. You will bless our community dearly. You will bless our president dearly if we just continue to pray for one another. So, Father God, let our prayers resonate around the world. Let our prayers resonate in Washington, D.C., and Tallahassee, and Vero Beach, and Miami, and New York, all over the place, all over the world, Father God. You'll hear our prayers. And then, Lord, you will tell us, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've done what I've asked. Now be healed and set free. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Just as a reminder to those that might be watching on YouTube and participating that way, we ask you to go ahead and put in any comments that you might have on any commission items, so when we get to that, we can address those. With that, we'll move on to additions and deletions to the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Fleischer.
I'd like to add the emergency item, my matters regarding the restaurant opening.
Okay, so that will be 14B1, Commissioner Fleischer, restaurants. Jason?
And Madam Chair, I'd like to add a coronavirus update.
Coronavirus. All right, anything else?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to take a second, and I would like to thank Commissioner Zork. He has paid up his tardy fee, as was in the motion from the last meeting, and brought donuts this morning. So I want to thank Commissioner Zork for taking care of that business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zork. All right, any other additions or deletions?
Move to approve as amended.
I have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien with a second by Commissioner Fleischer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, and with that, we'll move on to proclamations and presentations. Our first proclamation is going to be a presentation or proclamation designating the month of May 2020 as Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is going to be virtually received by Deborah Pizzamenti with New Horizons of the Treasure Coast in Okeechobee, as well as Angela Guzinski with the Mental Health Association. And with that, it's my pleasure to read a proclamation designating the month of May 2020 as Mental Health Awareness Month. whereas mental health is part of overall health and helps to sustain an individual's relationships, productivity, and ability to adapt to ever-changing situations. And whereas 1 in 4 adults experiences mental health problems. And whereas 1 in 17 adults lives with mental illness such as major depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia. And approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by age 24. And whereas long delays often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when individuals get help. Therefore, early identification and treatment can make a profound difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery. And whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. And whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of May 2020 be designated as Mental Health Awareness Month in Indian River County, Florida, in order to increase public understanding of the importance of mental health and to promote identification and treatment of mental illness. Adopted this 5th day of May 2020 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. And I would just like to thank the groups in our community that are working in the mental health arena, and anybody that needs their services, please reach out and contact them. And with that, we'll move on to a proclamation designating the week of May 3rd through 9th as National Corrections Officers and Employees Week, presented by Commissioner Flesher to Sheriff Lohr. Welcome.
There we go. We do have a microphone.
You're live.
Thank you. Madam Chair, good morning. And Sheriff, good morning. And I want to thank you and Major Flowers for being here today, as we have not had too many visitors in the past few months. And we hope that's going to change, but thank you for being here and be committed. Madam Chair, I'll present this proclamation designating the week of May 3rd through the 9th, 2020 as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week. Whereas in 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed Proclamation 5187, creating National Correctional Officers Week in 1996, and U.S. Senate officially changed the name of the week of National Correctional Officers and Employees Week. The first full week in May is recognized as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week to honor the work of correctional officers and correctional personnel nationwide. National Correctional Officers and Employees Week has been declared as May the 3rd, 2020. And whereas Indian River County staff of correctional officers, nurses, civilian correction assistants, and support staff serve in an increasingly complex and demanding profession, and work in a correctional environment where they are called upon to fill simultaneous custodial, supervisory, and counseling roles. They are responsible for the custody, the safety, and well-being of the inmates within Indian River County. And whereas in today's profession, correctional officers and correctional personnel are well-trained and work under demanding circumstances and face danger in their daily lives. And whereas the work of correctional officers and correctional personnel comes with a huge responsibility to maintain the public safety as well as to help inmates develop the skills necessary to become productive members of society. And whereas correctional officers and correctional personnel deserve our show of support as we utilize this week to honor their hard work, professionalism, dedication, and courage throughout the performance of their demanding and often conflicting roles and their efforts to protect public safety. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board honors May 3rd through the 9th, 2020 be designated as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week, duly adopted this 5th day of May 2020 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Good morning, Sheriff, and thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, I'm thrilled to yet again accept this resolution. The men and women of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, to include our correction staff of some 160 civilian and sworn employees, work hard each and every day. Currently, we have 485 inmates in our custody. It is very busy, as you can imagine, with PPEs and everything else. But we're proud to say we have not had any cases of the virus in your county jail. And on behalf of those men and women, I say thank you and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. And please thank them for the
Thank you,
work they're
Sheriff.
doing. All right, our next proclamation is going to be designating the week of May 3rd through the 9th as Public Service Recognition Week. And that will be presented by Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I imagine we will distribute this to our employees later on after it's been read. And you know, again, with the coronavirus pandemic, this becomes very appropriate. I know a lot of federal and state employees are working hard, but when I look at our county employees, how they have stepped up and handled this adversity, and we're continuing to deliver essential services. When you turn on the kitchen faucet or flush the toilet, water still gets there, things still work. Our roads are being maintained, the libraries are working, our trails and conservation lands are open for people to use at all levels. The building department, planning staff, all levels, the county employees have stepped up, handled this adversity, and we continue to deliver a high level of service. And I think that makes this proclamation extra special today. Not that we always appreciate the job our folks do, but certainly this recognition is very timely at this point. So this is a proclamation designating May 3rd through 9, 2020 as Public Service Recognition Week. Whereas public employees at the federal, state, and local levels conduct the public's business and perform essential services. And whereas public employees improve our quality of life through their efforts in many fields, including education, emergency management, public safety, transportation, natural resources, healthcare, and national defense. And whereas public employees dedicate themselves to the continuous improvement of the quality of life for Floridians, and many, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, healthcare practitioners, and others, risk their lives every day in public service. And whereas the efficiency and effectiveness of government depends on public employees ensuring government services are accessible and responsive to the diverse needs of residents. And whereas the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners recognizes the dedication, talents, and contributions made by public employees working in all levels of government. And whereas the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners appreciates the dedication, talents, and contributions of county employees who, by their example of achievements, are focusing on the highest standards of customer service. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the week of May 3 through 9, 2020 be observed as Public Service Recognition Week, and encourage all Indian River County residents to recognize the men and women who serve at all levels of government for the betterment of our great county, state, and nation. Adopted 5th day of May and endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our public service workers. We appreciate the job you're doing. There are no minutes for approval, so we'll move on to informational items. There are 2 items there I'd like to highlight. One is a proclamation honoring John McCoy on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Community Development, with 34 years of service. John will be greatly missed, and it was always a pleasure to work with him. The other is a proclamation honoring Kendall W. Blanchard on his retirement from the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners Department of Public Works Engineering Division with 29 years of service. And we appreciate his service and want to wish him a happy retirement. It was under informational. Do you want? Well, no, come on down. Tell us what he's going to be, what are you going to have him doing in his retirement? Do you have a list for him already? Yeah. Do you have a list of things for him to do in his retirement?
I do have a honeydew list that he's quite involved with all the things that he's doing anyway, so yes. I have a list, but
Well, we'll put him on notice that there's a list waiting for him at home.
he and I, we're very busy with things anyway. I mean, we do things for our neighbors, we do things in the community, and so we're, yeah. But he's a worker, so he's gonna miss coming to work every day, and so he'll be,
Well, if the list gets too long and he needs to come hide out, he's always welcome to come back.
yeah, he's been asked about that, so. He's a worker.
Wonderful.
We will miss him, and I'm sure that the list is well surveyed and planned for you. We hope he runs out of stuff so he does think about visiting us.
He's very knowledgeable of this county and surveying, but.
Ja- Jason, did
So I was here to
Yeah.
represent, but it's okay.
I think Jason wants to say something real quick.
Yeah, and I want to say, having known Kendall for a number of years, he's a great guy, and he will be missed by the whole survey crew and the county, and we appreciate his service, and he is a worker. You're exactly right. He is always out there working hard, and just a great guy, too. So we appreciate his service and wish him well with getting through any honeydew list you've got out there.
Thank you.
And then just this, for John McCoy, worked with him for a tremendous, for a large number of years and have a great deal of respect for John's knowledge and service to the county as well. So two very long-time employees that have done their job very well and served the public well over 3 decades. So thank you.
That'll be greatly missed. All right, the next item is the consent agenda. Anybody need to pull anything from consent?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item 8F, please.
F, okay. Anybody else? Anybody from the public wish to pull anything?
Madam Chair, move approval as amended.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher with a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner O'Brien, item 8F.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item relates to an agreement with DOT regarding our Indian River County welcome signs. And I just want to highlight this. I know Rich has been working very hard on this. We had a lot of roadblocks, I guess, or hills to climb to get to this point. But I'm very excited that before I step down from this dais, that the county welcome signs will be in place. So, Rich, you got about two and a half years to get this completed, but very excited at least to see some progress going here. And with that, I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Thanks, Peter. I would have hoped 6 months, but
Well, you need to talk to that guy, Bob.
So we do have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien with a second by Commissioner Zork, with a suggestion by Commissioner Solari that the time frame be moved up. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is going to be our community administrator matters, our coronavirus update. Jason?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Just a real brief coronavirus update this morning. Just want to start out with some of the statistics that we follow and look at as far as the Phase 1 reopening. As everyone knows, of course, the state of Florida began Phase 1 yesterday, May, not March. Seems like we've been in a time warp here a little bit, but May 4th. And then just kind of want to go over the recent trends for the state and then the county. So if you look at this sheet, it shows the total of a little under 37,000 cases in Florida, and about All but about 1,000 of those are Florida residents. The others are visitors to our state. And hospitalizations of about 6,000. Now, as you all know, those are cumulative hospitalizations. Those are not current hospitalizations. The numbers are considerably lower than that now. I'd call your attention to the charts on the right, and there's a more closer version of that on the next slide, if you will, Scott, that kind of shows the last couple of weeks of new cases. So you can see here a general trend. It's kind of a somewhat erratic day by day. You can have ups and downs based on the number of tests that come through, based on the different timing of the tests and when the labs release those tests. But you can see a general downward trend, and we'll talk a little bit more about the indicators on that. Next is testing. So we have tested 445,000 people in the state of Florida, which is over 2% of the population. Down at the lower left, you'll see that 8.3% of those tests have been positive, meaning that about 92% of those tests have been negative. So I'll call your attention to the charts on the right, the red and green there. The reds indicate positive tests, and the greens are negative, or vice versa. And what you can see is a downward trend in that percentage of positives. In the state, we were up closer to 10% a couple weeks ago, and that cumulative is 8.3. So we've had some more like 6%, 6-7% in the last couple weeks that are lowering that cumulative total. And a little bit deeper dive on some of the metrics that the state has been looking at. And I think it's important to talk a little bit. I've got some more about this in a future slide, but these are the types of trends on this next slide, Scott, that the governor and the state have been monitoring, these health indicators. So if you look at the chart in the upper left corner, those are emergency department visits with influenza-like illness, ILIs, the epidemiologists call those. I had to ask what ILI was, so now I know another acronym. I can add that into my hat. But you can see a significant decrease from about 8,900 there towards the end of March to the most recent week was about 1,800 of those influenza-like illnesses. Those are people presenting at medical professionals with symptoms that are like flu, which can end up being coronavirus, or it can be the flu or some other ailment. But it's a good indicator that we're looking at. If you look at on the upper right, you've got documented new cases. So you see a general downward trend from that late March time period. So the peak there in the second week on the chart was about 7,400 cases, and the most recent week is 4,500. Which is a decrease. I will also say that the number of tests has been rising over that last month period as well. So then a newer metric, because they always follow the influenza-like illnesses for any of these types of things that they're trying to track. But then you also have emergency department visits with COVID-like illness, which you'll see a similar trend there, going from a high of 2,700 roughly at late March to about 2,400. I'm sorry, that's not 2,500 now. It was about 9,000 at late March. Then you'll see on the bottom right the percentage of positive tests, which as we talked about was 8.3% cumulatively. That's from the beginning of the event, but you can see the peak there in that chart that was close to 8%, and we had some times that exceeded that. But most recently, the most recent week, it was 5.8% for the state. So next, we will dive into our local stats. So this chart, the orange chart at the bottom there, shows our local number of positives. I think even more so than the state of Florida, we have shown a clear negative trend in the last couple weeks, and those levels have been quite low. If you look at the last 10 days, you'll see Most days have 0 or 1 positive case. Over the weekend, this chart's showing 4, and that's because it tracks only the residents. There were a total of 5 cases announced on Sunday. So the question is, are we seeing some kind of spike? What I would say is what has been happening recently is some of the assisted living facilities and the senior centers, the health department and our medical professionals have been going in and doing testing of all of the folks in some of those facilities, and so that's why we saw that uptick on Sunday. So that doesn't seem to me. Now I'll have the caveat that clearly I'm not a medical expert, but the number of positive cases, the majority of those were from folks being tested at those facilities, which I think is a good thing, because what that is the testing that you'll hear everyone talking about on the news. The testing that needs to be done is being done in those key areas like the assisted living facilities. So they're going through identifying people. For the most part, the majority of those were also workers, and so those folks can be isolated, and so you can reduce the spread in those facilities where you have vulnerable individuals. So generally, a good trend overall for Indian River County. If you go to the next slide, Scott, it will show our local testing results. So good news, we are significantly below the state average of 8.3%. I'd say the state average is it's a large state, and so it's a combination of factors. You have the Southeast Florida regions with Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward that have a higher positive testing rates than the overall state. But Indian River County, we are at 4.8% positive tests cumulatively over the life of the coronavirus outbreak. And you can see these charts to the right there. You see some larger red numbers on a couple weeks ago at the end of March again, and those positive test results have been trending down, and I'll dive into that a little bit further on the next slide. So that's the bottom right slide is the lower right graph again is the percent positive. So you can see the peak there was right at 8% for Indian River County at the end of March. And the most recent week, our positive test results were 1.8%. So we're seeing a clear downward trend. And I think this is something that's important to talk about. You saw Governor DeSantis talk about this at his press conference last week, where as we are testing more and more individuals, we may actually see an increase in the number of cases, like we saw with the 5 on Sunday. That in and of itself is not necessarily an indicator that we have an increase in cases. One thing that you need to watch with that is the percent positive, because as you test more people, you're going to get more results, but you're more positives, but you're hoping that you see a decrease in the percentage. So fortunately, that's what we've been seeing so far, and those are the metrics that are important to monitor, and that's why we're really getting above my head as far as medical, because you can have both an increase in number of cases and a decrease in the percentage of positive tests. And so that's why we consult with the health department, their epidemiologists, our hospitals, and the medical providers to make more sense of that. If you've got both an increase in cases and a decrease in positive, that's when, boy, this is really getting beyond over my head real quickly. So that's why we're consulting with those folks. But generally, the indicators are good. If you look at the others, the upper left, you've got the influenza-like illnesses. We've seen that drop from about 40 a week 5 weeks ago to 3 a week in the most recent. And then you can see our documented new cases that peaked at 32 a week at the end of March there, and we had 7 over the last week. And then the same thing with the COVID-like illnesses, going from 27 per week down to 6 per week. So all positive trends for Indian River County. And this is a slide that shows some of the other metrics that we follow. And zooming in a little bit closer on the next slide, Scott, shows some of those cough, fever, shortness of breath, the underlying symptoms for those COVID and flu-like illnesses. And so we see a slight downward trend there over the last couple weeks showing up there. And then also just a closer look on the next slide the testing individually. So you can see on certain days, like back on April 22nd, we had a high of 9.1%, but that was 1 positive out of 10 tests. And then we've had days where we have 0 positives. It all gets worked into our 4.8% positive tests, which has been trending down over the time period. So what does this mean for us? Going forward, just a reminder about the social distancing, the wearing the cloth masks per the CDC guidelines in public settings where you can't accomplish social distancing, and then kind of our plan. How are we making decisions locally? If you will, on the next slide, Scott. So we have structured a local plan for making our local decisions on opening county facilities, opening beaches, things like that, in accordance and structured similarly to what the guidelines were laid out by the White House in their April 16th document for the opening up America again. We're also, of course, doing everything in accordance with the governor's plan for Florida's recovery, which so far is modeled after the White House guidelines again. So it's kind of nice that from the federal, state, and local level, we're following the similar guidelines and the same outline for making these decisions. And then I want to highlight that the governor's plan is the safe, smart, and step-by-step. So the governor is doing this based on the metrics, what we've talked about, looking at what is safe and doing so so that we have a successful reopening. We're taking a similar approach here. We all know about the Executive Order 20-112 that began yesterday that laid out the new rules as we began phase 1. And as I said, we've got our plan set forth in 3 phases as laid out by the White House guidelines, and which is being followed by the state as well. So that works out. So next, how that's changing our local operations. So this morning, happy to announce that the county has opened all of the public beaches for all activities. Last week, a week ago, we had opened the beaches in coordination with the City of Vero and the Town of Indian River Shores, opening their beach access points with certain use restrictions, the walking, the running, the swimming, the surfing, those types of things, but not allowing for the stationary activities and the coolers and the umbrellas. Based on the experience that we had, we saw folks out there being responsible over the last week and over the weekend, which we had great weather and lots of demand for the beach, but we didn't seem to have any crowding, significant crowding or social distancing issues. So with that, in coordination with the City of Vero and the Town of Indian River Shores, made the decision to let those restrictions lapse at 7 a.m. this morning. So now you can go to the beach and do all those things you want to do, the sunbathing, sitting. We still ask everyone to follow the CDC guidelines and the governor's executive order on the social distancing, stay 6 feet apart, no parties larger than 10, things like that. But you can go and enjoy the beach whichever way you desire, as long as you do so in accordance with those CDC guidelines. So next, the Sandridge Golf Course, we opened that last Friday under new social distancing guidelines. That has gone very well. Again, a great weekend. Weather was beautiful starting on May 1st, so we were booked throughout the day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Had a very good experience overall. We have done those things like single rider to a cart. Everyone has to prepay online. So if you're interested in playing at Sandridge, go online to sandridgegc.com and you can book your tee time and pay with credit card ahead of time, and then we'll get you through there. The snack bar is still not open, but we do have the beverage cart operating to provide those services to those folks. Everything has gone very well there. We also have increased the time between tee times. At the peak, we'll have 8 minutes between tee times, but now we have 12 minutes, so that's keeping from there being backups and log jams on the course, so you don't have parties running into each other. Everything seems to be going very well there. Also Friday, with our municipalities as well, we decided to open tennis and pickleball courts to singles play only with social distancing per the USTA and the pickleball group's recommendations. last Friday also with the libraries. We opened those services back up where people can call and request a book, a hold that's done during normal times, but now the libraries still remain closed physically, but you can request that book, and the library staff will have that for you at either the Main or the North County Library. That's 5 days a week, I think 8 to 4:30. Shooting range is our next opening. That will open this Friday at the same time that the state is opening the FWC is opening the state's shooting ranges with social distancing in place, limits on the number of folks in the hunter safety building and in the office, and we will be doing social distancing like every other station at the rifle and pistol ranges. So continuing to do this in a thoughtful, step-by-step approach, I think that's important. The approach the governor's taking and what we're taking as well is doing this in a methodical manner that is showing everyone that it's safe to go in the water again, if you will. We're doing this in a way that we believe is a lower risk and a way that is not going to it's going to minimize the chance for an increase, because that's important to give the public that the idea that it is safe to go out again and make sure that we have a successful reopening that everyone feels comfortable doing. As always, our Emergency Information Center is open 8 through 5, Monday through Friday. The number is 226-4000. You can get coronavirus updates on the county website, ircgov.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Nextdoor, and sign up for those EOC web alerts if you haven't already. You can do that at Alert Indian River or text IRC COVID-19 to 888-7777. And with that, thank you to everyone out there who has been sacrificing and working to get through this event. That includes our residents, our Indian River County taxpayers, our business owners, employees, county employees, from the first responders who've been out there handling folks on the front lines, helping people with COVID or whatever medical issues they may have, in addition to the folks from community development, building department, utilities, public works, who have been reworking the process to make sure that we can accomplish business and keep building construction and things like that going through this time, online, electronically, to the workers displaced in the private sector or in the public sector that we've been, for the most part, reassigning to those other tasks, whether it's answering calls at the EIC, helping out as beach ambassadors, and all those other things. And thanks to the board for your leadership, and again, all of the county residents, because I think we're having a better experience here than they're having in a lot of places in Florida and across the country. And I think that is in no small part due to the actions of all of us in Indian River County. We do it better than most places, and that's all of our. That's not the county government. That's the people of the county just doing what they do best, whether it's a hurricane time or coronavirus. And so we're very fortunate to live in a community where we see folks doing the right thing, and that has borne fruit, and we hope to continue to see that and work our way methodically back towards our new normal here. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm available.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. Jason, I think it's really important to emphasize the additional testing that's going on now. At your last update, we talked about the double hump effect and how we want to avoid that. But I think, if we were to test every county employee that's been in this building, we would probably get a handful of cases. And so you're now testing people that didn't display any symptoms. So if they're positive, they were probably asymptomatic cases. And I don't think it's reflective that maybe the virus is starting to spread again. It's just because of the ramped up testing, we're capturing people that may have already been exposed, which I think is an important data point to have as well, because it'll help us determine how much of the population has been exposed, what percent might have potential immunity, things like that. So I think it's good, but I think we need to really make sure that people don't get scared if they saw, hey, 5 cases, we need to shut the beaches back down again because the virus is going rampant. I would point out, and I think this is probably the most important metric to me is that since April 23rd, our hospitalizations has been flat, the cumulative number. So we think a lot of the cases we're seeing now probably were asymptomatic or very mild cases where they weren't hospitalized. So I think that's a important figure to look at. But I think we just really need to make sure people understand, and the Governor DeSantis tried to mention this too last week, is that with increased testing, you're going to get increased cases. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to step back from what we're doing, but we need to make sure, as we look at that data, that it's truly reflective of just the additional testing. But anyway, with that, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, other questions for Jason? No? All right. Thank you, Jason, for the update. Our next item is going to be County Attorney's Matters. First item under that is Children's Services Dedicated Millage. Dylan?
Thank you very much, Chair. On February 25th, 2020, the board had a workshop concerning a referendum establishing a dedicated millage for children's services. At the workshop, the board gave guidance to the county attorney's office on a number of different issues relating to that matter. After that meeting, I began drafting the ordinance, which I was intending to bring back to this board. But since then, as we've talked about a bunch, we were obviously hit by COVID-19 pandemic. In the conversations with representatives supporting the Children's Services dedicated millage since then, it became clear that this was not the time to move forward on the Children's Services dedicated millage. County Attorney's Office recommends that at this time we put this on hold and the County Attorney's Office bring this back in 2021 for consideration to be added to the November 2022 ballot. I would just like to conclude by just saying I want to thank Lisa, Meredith, Hope, Jeff, Michael, everybody who worked so hard on this item, spent a lot of time with Jason, myself, and Kristen, and Michael Zito talking about these issues, hashing through these issues. It wasn't as simple as it appeared, and there was a lot of stuff to work through. So I just want to really thank all of them for their hard work on this matter and willing to kind of put this aside while we were dealing with the pandemic and looking forward to coming back and working with you guys next year. So with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Commissioner Adams and Madam Chair. We wholeheartedly agree with the recommendation to put this on hold. We realize that there's a bigger issue in this county right now, and that is the ongoing impacts of COVID-19, not only now, but on the days following the end of the pandemic, so to speak. We know that the days following this, there will be even a greater need for children's services and attention to that issue, and we take heart in the fact of the progress that we made. We would like to thank several people. First of all, I'd like to thank Lisa Kale, our facilitator, for this exploratory group. Every time we would go down a rabbit hole, she would pull us back out and put us on track and keep us going. I'd also like to thank the exploratory group themselves. It's a tremendous amount of great leaders in this community who have given of their time to do this. And thirdly, I'd like to thank Dylan. I've never met a more respectful, professional, compassionate, and great counsel, upright person than Dylan Reingold. He told us how things should be, and he gave us great advice. He's also a great advocate for you all, and it was a pleasure working with Dylan. We'd also like to thank Jason and Mike Zito and Kristen for their time. They were up front with us. They didn't pull any punches with us, but they were willing to work with us, and they were a great group of people to work with, and we really appreciate them. Next on the list is Commissioner O'Brien. He had the intestinal fortitude to take up our cause and to care about the children in this community, and we really thank you, Peter, for your advice and guidance. Next on the list is you, Commissioner Adams, for being the chairman and leading this group of commissioners, having the ability to have the workshop. We appreciate you doing that. But lastly, we'd like to thank the commissioners in total for their time. We met with each one of you several times. You gave us your time and your attention, and we really appreciate that. We're looking forward to the day when we can bring this back next year to put on the 2022 ballot. But we realize right now that there's more important things to address, and that's the community and protecting the community and addressing the impacts of COVID-19. So we'd like to thank everybody for that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Jeff and Lisa and Michael and Meredith, I just want to thank you all for your professionalism in all this. You all did your research, you researched things, you got people from other counties, you looked at this from a lot of different ways and made very thoughtful decisions. And I know it's a little disappointing after how much work you've put in to have to step back, but I think the transparency you're showing here and the sensitivity to the residents is to be commended. So thank you all for all of your efforts. And when the time is right, I look forward to bringing this back and moving forward with it. So, but thank you all for your hard work on this and dedication.
Wonderful. Yes, and I just echo Commissioner O'Brien's comments and especially the sensitivity to the community at this time. I think that it's very awe-inspiring. So, Commissioners, other questions, comments, or concerns? I think Dylan would like a motion on this.
Move to defer the Children's Trust millage to undetermined point in the future until the time seems right. Just
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien with a second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next item is going to be approval of agreement to purchase and sell with Jean Perry and the estate of Helen Johnson for 45th Street US Highway 1 intersection improvements. Mr. DeBrawl, welcome.
Thank you. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office in this matter. Scott, if you could please put up the aerial that says Perry Johnson on the screen for us to take a look at. It's under presentations.
The computer never works when you want it to.
I thought I had it up. Commissioners, Mr. Gene Perry and the late Helen Johnson own this 0.74 acre zoned light industrial parcel at the corner of Old Dixie Highway and 45th Street. It's improved with a 720 square foot house that has a couple of porches on it. This property, as I said, was owned by the late Helen Johnson along with Mr. Perry. The county needs a 300 square foot corner clip at the corner of the property there at Old Dixie and 45th Street for the 45th Street Improvement Project with US 1. This is the last parcel of right-of-way that is needed for this project. Staff had an appraisal done on this and an updated appraisal. The first appraisal, as far as the property is concerned, came out at a value of $2,100. The second one that was updated was a little bit more at $2,300, with a total value of the property valued at a little better than $244,000 for the 0.74 acres of the whole parcel. Mr. Perry was represented by Mr. Neal from Fort Pierce, an eminent domain attorney with some 30 years of experience. The estate of Helen Johnson was represented by the personal representative and an attorney out of Tampa, Mr. Holloman. Mrs. Johnson passed away while a resident of the state of Texas, so we had to go ahead and probate her estate, or her estate had to be probated in Texas to be able to have the county receive clear title to this parcel. Mr. Neal took the lead on this in hiring the expert witnesses. They hired an appraiser and an engineer to take a look at the matter. And although it is only 300 square feet, The price is a little, certainly is disproportionate to take a look at. The offer that staff and the two owners present to the board now would be a purchase price of $5,500. That would be split equally between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Perry. There would be fees as far as appraisal fees of $6,605 to the appraiser, and engineering fees of $1,950. Attorney's fees in this matter based on an hourly rate to Mr. Hulleman would be $3,750 for his 12 hours of work on the estate. And as I said, Mr. Neal's office took the lead on this. His attorney's fees exceeded $18,000. He has offered a discount down to $13,650, making the total settlement in this matter $31,455. As I said, this is disproportionate as far as the area of the take being only 300 square feet versus the cost involved. And I know Commissioner O'Brien can have his calculator smoking over there as far as the square footage versus, or the per acre price on this matter. I sent this matter for review to our outside counsel, Bill Doney, and I spoke with him at length on Friday on this matter after he had a chance to review it. His opinion was that, yes, the prices do indeed seem disproportionate, but on these small takes, it's very difficult to try and align the amounts charged versus the size of the parcel. What Mr. Holloman and Mr. Neal will argue is that no matter how big the parcel is not a matter. It's still that the government is taking property, and even though it's a small take, they're still entitled, the landowners are still entitled to an engineer taking a look at it and an appraiser taking a look at it in this matter. So staff's recommendation, and I know Mr. Brown is not in agreement with the amount of the attorney's fees sought in this matter, is for approval of the recommended settlement. And I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
So, Bill, what you're indicating is that no matter the size of the property being taken, there's always going to kind of be a base price, and sometimes proportionally with the smaller properties, that base price, because of the work that has to be done by each side, is going to seem rather larger than...
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner O'Brien, did you have a question?
I have a couple comments, I guess, Madam Chair. Thank you. And Bill, first of all, my calculator only goes up to 6 figures, so when we hit over $1 million per acre, it blanked out on me. So, the one attorney doing the probate work for the estate, 12 and a half hours, and that's coordinating with Texas and clearing, doing the whole probate thing, and I've been through that. That does take a lot of time. So this guy can probate an entire estate through a different state in 12 and a half hours. And I get that. That sounds reasonable. And I'm not complaining that one. The other guy, just a simple take, took over a week, 40 hours to figure out on a 0.03 acre take. That, to me, is just criminal and wrong. So what I would propose is, I think we would pay the estate attorney his 12 and a half hours of time, $37.50, but then we look at the other attorney and we pay him the percentage-based fee on the difference between whatever our offer was, either $2,100 or $2,300 and $5,500, and pay him the percentage of that. And because I just coming in and saying it took him 40 hours to figure this out is just ridiculous. And I guess we don't have much wiggle room on the appraisal and engineering costs, but I can't support paying $13,650 for an entire week's worth of work from this attorney on on something that isn't that complicated of a take, you know, so, anyway, that's where I stand on it, and I can't support the motion as it is here without reducing the attorney fee.
There hasn't been a motion yet, right?
Yeah, no,
I believe not. No.
Oh,
Okay, but I mean, you used the word motion, that's what I want to clarify. So do you want to make that a motion?
I'd be glad to make it now if you all want me to. So I move that we pay to the property owners the $5,500 in the backup. We pay the appraisal costs of $6,605, engineering costs of $1,950. We pay Mr. Holoman $3,750. And then for Mr. Neal, we will pay him the statutory percentage between what our offer was. And Bill, was our offer 21 or 2,300?
2,100 was the initial offer
Okay,
compared to the fee would work out to be $1,122.
Okay, that would be,
Statutory fee.
that would be my motion, the statutory fee of $1,122.
Second.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, just as a reminder, in pointing this out, you're agreeing to somebody's $37.50 fee versus a fee of $1,122.
And as I mentioned earlier, you know, settling in a state through probate in a different state than, you know, it's not like it was done here in this county. It involved Texas and long distance and a lot of things, and probate just takes time. I understand that. And I think 12 and a half hours sounds to me as a reasonable amount of time for an attorney to work through all that. But on the take side, this is a very small, it's a very simple take. There's no severance damages, there's nothing else. And I just don't see how somebody can justify and come before us and say, yeah, here's my timesheet. I spent an entire week trying to figure out a .03 parcel take with the other guy doing all the heavy lifting with the probate end of it. So I think we're paying him what he earned, my opinion.
The only question I have, and I have no problem with what you're proposing, is if we pay one under the statutory guidelines and not the other, does that open us to some kind of,
The result, I would imagine, would be is that Mr. Neal will not recommend this settlement to his client, and will have to go ahead and file in eminent domain for the take. It'll be simply a matter of fees at that point. I would have to think that the $5,500 number would be accepted by the county and be accepted by the other side, possibly, and then we would just discuss attorney's fees and expert witness costs.
okay, all right. Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, can we put the slide back up where it illustrated the parcel? This is a question more for Rich, once we have this up. You can come to the podium. It's not a bad question. And I get we're taking the southwest corner clip off of this, but when you look at the right-of-way to the west of the tracks and to the east, they both align up with what I'd say we did the right-of-way adjustment on the south side from Quality Packers before they carved that parcel out for a new development that's going on. But did you look at matching up the right-of-way on both sides? And I know it would be a more significant take because then it takes the structure on there, but the values in the land, probably not so much the structure. I know we have scheduled improvements for 45th Street, and I guess everything must fit with the corner clip, but if we're looking down the road a ways, are we just creating another hurdle for us to have to deal with down the road and taking and matching the right-of-way to the east and west on the north side?
Okay, on the east-west portion, we completed our design. We don't need, number one, we don't need any more right-of-way along there, so we chose not to pursue it. Number two, if we were to straighten the right-of-way line out, we'd take the whole property. It goes right through the house. We looked at the design. The design is 100% complete. we can make it work within the right of way, and we didn't feel that it was in our best interest to go ahead and take the house on the east-west corridor. There was no real reason to line it up, and take that. So we just decided to take the corner clip, which we can't really make the project work safely if we don't take that corner clip.
Okay, and then all our crossing improvements, the sidewalks on 45th Street and all that, everything will fit good and work in the east-west right-of-way that we have east of Old Dixie?
Yes, sir. One of the biggest problems that we have on this corridor, if you look at the little white boxes in that corner where the right-of-way jogs, that's AT&T easement. The cost for us to move that AT&T boxes, if we were to do any improvements to the north, would be astronomical. So we decided to move the sidewalk to the south side along where the Wawa's going in. Pedestrian access will be on the south side, and it'll go down to US 1 and have crosswalks when we redo the signal at that location.
Will there be, since the school is on the north side of the street, where do we have a designated crossover for the sidewalk for the kids coming from?
There'll be a crossing at the Old Dixie 45th Street intersection.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for looking at all those angles.
Sir.
All right, any other questions for staff or discussion? There is a motion by Commissioner O'Brien with a second by Commissioner Solari. Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. And the motion carries 4-1. All right, yes, thank you. It has been requested for, I'm sorry, a quick break, so we'll take a quick 5-minute break. If that's okay with everybody, and we'll be right back. next item on our agenda is Commissioners' Matters. Commissioner Flesher, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I know it's been a long few months for all of us. It's been even longer for the restaurateurs, all the service personnel, the suppliers, the purveyors, and we're grateful that as we travel this pathway of recovery, that some of the restrictions have been loosened up. In that process, phase one of the governor's rollout is a 25% attendance with spatial concerns taken into consideration and social distancing. And I find it, well, it's a start. And it will give the opportunity for restaurants to begin the process. Having been raised in that environment, and you currently in that environment, realizing that it is a difficult task to get 25% and get it properly serviced and properly maintained. And then we also have the fact that some folks just might not feel that comfortable coming into a restaurant at this time. So I was hoping that we could generate some interest in directing our county administrator to go forward with the alfresco dining style, an outdoor table environment where applicable, where permissible, where it does not constrain other activities. Most certainly, I believe people will be more compelled to go out to that environment, and it will help our restaurateurs greatly. It will get some more people back to work, and I think it's an opportunity that we would be remiss in not moving forward if, considering the fact that the process to get there is oftentimes cumbersome. You have to provide a detailed plan, operational plan, and it has to go through the proper channels within the county government. And I was hoping that if we did direct the county administrator to go forward, that we can do so with a seamless transition and not have so many of the constraints necessary that are deemed necessary in customary times to be able to go forward and get people into this process as quickly as possible. It's also a concern that, well, if we move forward in this position, that, well, when do we end this? And we're going to leave that. I discussed it with the county administrator as well. And there are ways to put a limitation on this and make it possible to afford this opportunity. And I think it's a good shot in the arm for our restaurants and the public.
Is that a motion?
So my motion would, yeah, you know what?
I'd be
It's a
happy.
rather lengthy motion, and I don't want to burden Madam Clerk with having to type out that type of motion. So I'd just like to make motion to direct staff to open up the alfresco or curbside dining as best we can during the COVID-19 recovery phase.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes.
Just like to add with that, and I think this is a great idea. I know we have some rules that kick in when you, let's say they want to put a tent in the parking lot, put a table under the tent, and if the tent's greater than 10 by 10, there's a whole nother set of permits you have to get. I'd like to have all those waived, or not even have them be applicable, because I think the special event, how they look at special event tent structures, you have to have a fire extinguisher, you have to have all these things. These people are just sitting there eating their food. I don't think some of those items are necessary. So whatever the least cumbersome, the quickest path to let them get open to do this.
I
And if an issue comes up, we'll address it, but I think most of them are pretty responsible operators.
Well, of course, you're referring to the canopy, anything greater than 10 by 10 must have exit signs and fire extinguishers available. And I believe that that's a safety risk that we don't want to entertain. I'd rather leave it up to the county administrator to go forward and ensure that safety regulations, spatial concerns, parking spaces, that they all be addressed. I think that if we go forward with this, and it sounds like there might be a very good interest in it, that we leave it all up to the county administrator to move forward under the emergency orders that he has, and be guided by the fact that this is to promote commerceability and the viability and also public interest to ensure that they have the dining experience in a safe environment.
So if I could just give some background that's come down from the state for the restaurant industry through DBPR, one of the things that we've been told as restaurateurs is the industry was asking for to be opened back up at 50% occupancy because of the viability of the business. It's very difficult, depending on the size of your restaurant, when you're constrained to a certain capacity, to make it worth your while to even reopen at 25%. The direction that we've gotten is that the 25% applies only to your customer capacity. So any employees that you bring in do not count against your 25%. The other thing that we have been told is that to the extent that we can accommodate additional outdoor seating, we would be encouraged to do that. That does not count against your 25%. That solely requires you to have a 6-foot table separation and no tables or parties larger than 10. What the guidance that we're kind of getting is if you can accommodate that on your property, that you would be encouraged to do so, obviously within the constraints of your local government's regulations, but that the DBPR and the inspectors are not going to be coming around and making sure that they're not going to be coming around looking to see if those numbers then throw off something with your license. The other thing that we've been told as far as alcohol sales goes is the current exemptions to our restaurant liquor licenses that we have right now as far as takeout alcohol with food purchases still stands in place, partly because of that 25%. So we would expect that to go away when occupancy levels start rising. And I would assume that if this is something that we would like to do, that we would tie kind of the ability for that freestanding outside stuff that might be outside the original permit to kind of go away as those occupancy levels start rising and we go back to a normal. But the only thing I would mention about the tents and those types of things is what we're being told as far as outdoor dining is it should be viewed a little bit more as temporary and as movable. So for instance, we would bring the tables and chairs back in at night. We have looked at, for Marsh Landing particularly, we have a large parking lot area, but there's no trees. But if that's something that we would want to do, we would have smaller individual umbrellas, which then you don't run fly the fire regulations. So I think that most agencies and groups are looking at ways to make it work for everybody and understanding the constraints that everybody's in. And I would think that we could just kind of mirror that attitude where, you know, we understand that this might be temporary and that staff will kind of work with those groups and restaurants and whatnot as we reopen and not be overly aggressive in some of those enforcement issues to the extent that it's not a safety concern.
Well, I didn't anticipate anybody anchoring tables with concrete to the sidewalks, but by the same, and this is, yes, Madam Chair, this is temporary in nature, but I believe that the county administrator will have a pullback at a certain point, whether it's 75% or 90% or whatever he deems.
And I'm sure it will mirror whatever the state's doing. And
Let's just get people working and dining and.
I think it's a great idea.
Back to normal.
Commissioner O'Brien, did you have a question? Or
Yeah, a couple things. Thank you, Madam Chair. One, appreciate Commissioner Flesher bringing this forward. As I think you all realize, we got a email last week from a county employee suggesting we have a board discussion on this. So I appreciate Commissioner Flesher following up on that. Secondly, after the governor's press conference last week, I was very supportive of this entire concept. Matter of fact, I sent a text to the City of Vero Beach city manager suggesting they close 14th Avenue down for those 3 blocks in downtown Vero, because a lot of the restaurants there, they have a very narrow little sidewalk where they can squeeze a couple tables, but it's not enough, and with a 25% limit, that's not enough for them to open, I don't think. So I suggested they close the street down so they could then expand out further and have more tables available. He said they would look into it, but I haven't heard them doing anything about it. But I think this is a good thing to do. I agree with Commissioner Zork. I think we should make this the easiest and simple, less paperwork. Just say, for the next 2 months, if you want to put a table outside, do it, and let's not worry about technicalities. I think they'll probably have a bigger issue with the landlord of the mall or wherever they are with the parking and getting that permission. So let's not give them another roadblock from our end to say, listen, you want to put a table and chairs out in the parking lot, have at it, and good luck to you. So that would be what I'm supporting.
Commissioner Solari, did you have a comment?
Not much. I mean, everybody's really hit everything. I think what you said, figure out ways to make it work. I think that's what we want to do. I'm confident that Jason understands where we're all coming from, and that I would think he'd be for it. And I'll just say that, the more space we can give people, well, I'll back up by saying the social distancing is breaking down, and more people, at least from the little bit I can see, are starting to get closer and closer together. And if there isn't more opportunity for people to get out and do things with space, then that social distancing is going to break out more. So the more space we can give people, whether it's retail stores, dining stores, or whatever, when they go out, the better. So again, Commissioner Fletcher, I think this is a great step forward, and I think that it'll be good for the community. So thank you, and happy to have a vote on it.
All right. Anything else, Jason?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, staff is completely on board with this, agree with the concept. We talked with the city managers yesterday about the same thing. Universally, pretty much, they're all in line with that same line of thinking. And don't know the amount of formality or not is something that we'll work through. And my general idea is that we lay out some guidelines. These are things you don't have to do, like if there's a temporary use permit, we're going to waive that. We're not going to, in our situation, those outdoor dining restrictions are not within code, but within the site plan approval. So we would waive those and not do code enforcement on them. And our belief and the cities we're matching this is we don't want to have a process for them to go through. We're just going to say, hey, these are the things we're going to waive, and let them do that. We don't want to be reviewing everybody's plan for this, but we just want to lay out the guidelines that say, hey, this is what we're going to waive. We do want to make sure that they're not blocking ingress, egress, fire lanes, things like that. But to make it something that's not a process for them to go through, but basically saying, hey, these are the things that we're going to let you do. We're asking you to maintain these things, and of course, the social distancing is part of the governor's order. But to make this not a process, those restaurateurs have enough to deal with to not go through a process from us, but just kind of have a set of guidelines that this is what we're waiving. This is what we want you to keep in mind, and do not be aggressive. We're not going to have code enforcement out there driving around very aggressively, kind of like the same stance that I'm getting from DBPR, that they're not going to be looking for violations. It's just going to be, we would only address things if there's a public health safety issue, and our enforcement would be not aggressive. So,
All right. There is a motion and a second. Who was the second? Commissioner Solari. Is there any further discussion? Anybody from the public? Yes, welcome.
Morning, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting. I support Commissioner Fletcher's original motion. I think it's a good motion. I think it's a good step. Restaurants really can't exist on 25% occupancy. We all know that. So anything we can do to help that, and as long as it's within the boundaries of their property and it doesn't hinder any fire exits or anything like that, I think we all have to be in favor of this. So I support Commissioner Fletcher's original motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Our next item is Commissioners' Matters. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Item 14C1, I'll provide a little backup. The item is pretty self-explanatory that on the March 10th, when the motion to adopt the impact fees with an implementation date in June, to look at postponing those for a one-year period. Just kind of researching what's going on here in our local market. A significant number of our local builder developers have already started significant layoffs. One particular builder, comparing April to April, I said, what were your April numbers last year? What are they this year? So they're looking at a 75% drop-off in sales for the month of April, compounded with cancellations from earlier March contracts. So the change is coming. It just hasn't necessarily been fully reflected yet in the data that the county has. Just from a timeline standpoint, from the moment somebody comes to somebody's model house or a sales office to construct something new, the timeline is about 60 to 70 days from the time they go, this is the house I want on this lot, to the day it ends up in the planning department. So these items that are still coming through today are from your January, early February timeframe that we're seeing still come in the door today. On the commercial side, I checked it with two people to make sure this is correct. Last year at this time, there was a considerable number of commercial land opportunities that were under contract. This year, we have a total of 2 for the last 6 weeks. That's 2 contracts on developable land, which is I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a significant drop-off. I know we've got some great backup from staff on some of the projects that are in there. I'd just like to comment that at least one of those has been canceled currently out of that list of 10 in some of Jason's backup. The Publix that's mentioned in there, that 71,000 square feet, has been in the pipeline for 18 months to get to this point. And it's also not Publix. It's a family development company that develops Publix, and then Publix becomes a tenant. It's not Publix corporate coming in here and doing this. With all that's changed since then, my opinion hasn't changed when I voted no on the original motion, is that we need to freeze the impact fees at where they were for a year to look and see what are the true changes and effects of COVID, which I think we'll see over the next 60 days. We'll see some of the reality of some of this coming through, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair, and after I'll be happy to do a motion.
Okay, questions or comments for Commissioner Zork?
The only, I guess, comment I have is it's hard to pinpoint why things are slowing down. Is it just because everybody was ordered to stay at home, and so now nobody's out looking at models or doing things like that? And I have no way of knowing that if we did waive or lower the impact fees, if that savings is passed on to the person buying the house, or if just the builder keeps it and it adds to their profit level. And then I look at the directory of the new homes for sale, 200,000s, 300s, 340,000s. I don't see that those buyers need a financial break. You know, if they're paying for a house starting at $340,000, I don't think an $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 impact fee is the make or break deal on that. I think people have bigger issues now besides finances. I think a lot of the people buying these new homes are retirees or people that have good working jobs and still have them. You know, we did this back in, it was either '09 or '10 to reduce or waive impact fees on commercial projects, and very things responded to that. So in my mind, it's not about the dollars. There's a lot of other things going on. I think people right now just said, hey, we've got other things to worry about than picking out a new home and what cabinets we want and things like that. So we're just going to hunker down and isolate and do all the right things. And I don't think it's a dollar, for the homes we're looking at, I don't think it's a dollar issue. I think it's just other issues related with the virus and the shutdown and the being at home and quarantine and stuff. So I would be in favor of just go ahead and implementing the impact fee as scheduled, as was in the slide that Commissioner Zork provided. This does provide for those lower income folks. If it's a less than 1,000 square foot home, there are no impact fees. And so I think that's targeting the people that really need the break. And then again, between 1,000 and 1,500 square feet is a 50% reduction of impact fee. So I would like to see us go ahead and implement that, because those are the people that really could use a dollar break. But for the $340,000 home, I don't think $9,000 or $10,000 is the make or break. So I appreciate Commissioner Zork bringing this forward and looking at ideas to address this, but I don't believe it's a dollar issue. I think it's just other factors, and once these other factors are cleared, I think we'll see this pick back up. Staff did provide that there's still pretty fair activity with the planner of the day. Obviously, the in-person walk-in numbers have dropped, but as of the last week of data, they're still doing 50, 60 phone calls and emails. So that tells me there's still people interested in the activity. Staff also had said that some of the things, preliminary plats, pre-application conferences, and major site plans were all higher in April than in 4 of the previous 5 months. And staff looks at this as a indicator of future building permit activity. So what I would suggest maybe is we let things stand now the way they are, and let's wait and see what happens through May and June, and then we can come revisit it then if we need to. But I wouldn't want to do this right now at this point in time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other comments? Yes.
I'd like to maybe add some comments back to Commissioner O'Brien. So if you're the hotel developer looking at putting a hotel at, I know Felsmer's been wanting a hotel for a long time, a 120-room hotel, you're looking at over $100,000 difference. That, combined with the uncertainty in the market, is just how many more nails in the coffin before they go, it's just not worth the risk, so they park the project. You know, if you wait to visit it in June, commercial things with that pipeline of 18 to 24 months, if they think nothing's going to change and the market's uncertain and our fees are going up, we'll just park it. So these changes would have an effect on things that wouldn't be coming in till June or July because of the backlog, the time frame. And again, on some of those items that we looked at, that list of 10 projects that are listed, I think 2 of the 10 of those are now completely dead. So if that's a 20% drop on new things that have come in, that's a decent indicator of a reduction if we're looking at, that's a small snapshot though. If you look at the residential single-family permits from March to April, they're about half. That's a 50% drop. If you look at the number of commercial, it's about a 12% drop, give or take. And then under trade permits, it's about a 35% drop. So we're seeing some indicators from March 20 to April 20 on the 3-column spreadsheet that's already showing some of those early signs of a slowdown that are in there.
And Commissioner Zork, those are all good points, and I appreciate them, but I'd also say that if you look back in time, in September 19, there was a big drop, and then October 19, it bounced back up, and then in November 19, another big drop. So, again, 1 month change isn't, to me, a trend in something like this. And in regards to a 120-room hotel going in, if I'm that developer, I'm not worried about the $100,000. I'm looking at the fact that, hey, it might be a year before tourism numbers even come back up to where they were. I don't want to build a hotel and have it sit empty for a year, because that's going to cost me a lot more until I see signs that the tourism has recovered. I want to see signs that European visitors are coming back. I want to see signs that Canadian visitors are coming down again. You know, I want to see Florida get back up to over 100 million tourists before I build a hotel. So again, I think it's those outside influences that would drive that decision than actual, okay, $100,000, boy, that's going to make or break it. I'm thinking, I'm not going to build this thing till I see the tourism numbers come back. So I'm not building a hotel until I see that happen. So that's how I would look at it, that you got to have the people coming to fill that thing. I don't think it's one of those, if you build it, they will come. I think you have to see them coming, then you build it. So, but anyway, that's just my thoughts on it.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other comments? Anybody from the public?
Again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting. I'm also a board member of the Indian River Neighborhood Association. Here's my philosophy on this. We almost never can make new growth pay for itself. But one of the few opportunities we have to make new development pay for itself is through impact fees. And I've also been a builder in this county for 20 years. I think that if you don't let impact fees be paid by the new development, all you're doing is putting the burden on the original tax-paying citizen who already lives here. I don't think that's fair. The tax-paying citizen that lives here should not be supplementing new development. The developer should supplement new development. That's what we believe in. We control growth through quality, not quantity. And I think that a quality development figures impact fees into the design of its cost structure. And Commissioner Zork may know developers and builders that are men of the cloth, but most of the developers that I work with, and me myself, I've known very few to refund the savings on impact fees, but that would be figured into our profit. So I think the impact fees, I agree with Commissioner O'Brien, leaving them stay where they are for now to see where we go. And to put a moratorium on impact fees for a year, that's really putting a burden on the taxpayers that live here. And I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hey, Madam
Yes.
Chair, all the old impact fee structure and fees would stay in effect. We're not asking to eliminate them to zero. It's just go to the prior fee structure we've operated under since 2014.
Okay, thank you. Is there's no motion?
Not yet, but I will.
Okay, well, did you want to make one?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the impact fee increases that were adopted on the March 10, 2020 for a period of 1 year, but also allow the reduction in the residential fees for affordable housing that were also adopted on the March 10th meeting.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second.
All right, thank you.
All right. With that, we'll move on to special districts and boards. Our first is Solid Waste Disposal District, Amendment Number 2 to Site Crafters of Florida. Welcome, Vinny.
I want to see how Vinny.
Good morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Utility Services. I can assure you, Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Solari, that this work will be done this year.
All right.
Yes.
Where's Rich? I hope he hears that.
So, just to
Why does he always leave when a good challenge is laid down?
I
I don't understand
Smart
that at all.
man.
no problem.
I'll relay it to him.
So just a quick history, you may recall that the board directed staff to improve the site access area in and around where the yard waste debris is dropped off by our residents because of some of the issues related to some of the nails and some of the low-lying areas. We had some folks that came to address the board about the site conditions. So with that being said, staff went out and actually received two things. One was a contract with Atlas Organics that's done a great job with us. They started at the first of the year to be able to receive and process our yard waste, but also to hire site contractors to do some of the concrete work at the C&D facility, bring that over to the site to help build it up. So we have some pictures to show you what that looked like before the improvements. You can see that this area was pretty low to begin with, a lot of ponding, a lot of heavy rain, a lot of mud. Folks were getting stuck. They were complaining that you can see in the bottom left-hand portion a lot of organics in there. When you mix some of the organics that were used to try to stabilize that in water, it tends to be a soupy, muddy mess. And so there's really not any kind of planned improvements in that area, if you will. This was kind of like a deferred maintenance item on the SWID side. And so we hired site crafters to be able to bring in some material from the C&D facility. So what you see here is 4 areas that was included in the backup of your agenda. The access road being right next to that area between A and B2. B1 and B2 are the portions of the Atlas contractual agreements to improve up to $250,000. A and C is the county SWID portion of the improvements. In total, you're looking at just over 10 acres. I believe it's 10.2 acres with approximately a 60-40 split, 60% being SWID's improvement on the acreage and 40% being the contractual requirements for Atlas. And so from a staging standpoint, A was done first. B1 was an area that Atlas wanted to improve with respect to their area because that's access on the, if you look at the top left portion at B1 in the northeast corner, that's the access to the old INEO site, which is now the Indian River Eco District site, where they're bringing that material to create some composting, extended aerated static pile composting with the finished material that's mulched at the site. So again, some work in progress pictures for the material that was brought in here, and a vast majority of the cost is related to the material that has to be brought in, placed, and then spread out according to a positive slope from the center line to the off area where the swales are with the orange rectangles that you see in the pictures. This was the concrete crushing by site crafters, the old C&D facility where they brought in the machine to be able to use that material for beneficial reuse with some of the institutional controls to keep the dust down, and then placing that material over at the site with some of the pictures with number C being shown here. So, in summary, you look at the area that was attached in your backup for the amount of filled dirt. We did have the board approval in March of this year for $174,000, which was amendment number 1 to site crafters. And so staff is recommending today, subject to board approval, for 2 things. One is to waive the requirements for bid for additional work at 2 site crafters of Florida Incorporated under the existing contract agreement for yard waste site improvements. And this is a proposed second amendment to said agreement. And secondarily, if that is approved, authorize the chairman to sign the agreement after review and approval of the additional public construction bond due to the cost, as well as by the county attorney, as well as making sure that the contract is within form and legal sufficiency. Certainly available for any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Vinny. I can say from the pictures, having been out there, it is a vast improvement, and I would not be scared to drive across it like last time. I literally thought we needed to have somebody on call to winch us out if necessary. Commissioners, yes, Commissioner Solari.
Vinny, can you roughly say what the size area is in acres that you're working on there?
Can we call that back up? So roughly it's about 10 acres in size.
Okay, and you said you can get this done within the 6-month time period?
To finalize the project, yes. Yep.
So utilities can work on a big 10-acre project and get it done within 6 months, but it's going to take 2 years maybe for Public Works to put up 3 signs?
Well, it is a sign, so I don't want.
Well, in Rich's defense, he's got to work with DOT, so.
Okay, that does help explain it a lot. So, so DEP has nothing to do with this one?
That's correct.
Okay, good. In that case, I move approval.
I'll second that and just discussion, Madam Chair. I too have been out there since the improvements. Of course, with this whole stay-at-home thing, my wife came a long list of yard work for me to do, so necessitated a trip out to the waste there. And it is, as Chairman Adams said, it's a much, much nicer experience going out there knowing you're not going to get stuck. So I think this has been a very good project and will have a great public benefit. So glad to second the motion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, we do have a motion by Commissioner Solari with a second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we
Happy
stand
Cinco de
adjourned.
Mayo.
Oh, yes, happy Cinco de Mayo. It's Taco Tuesday. Adjourned for margaritas.